Hello and welcome back. I decided to make a part 2 to my blog this month. It turns out that the first project, the mural, ended up being a lot. There was a lot of content to flesh out, so I didn't want it to feel like it was dragging on. So I decided to let's just turn it into 2 blogs and split up the projects completely. So yeah, I guess that's the thing about starting to make videos like this, is that I'll start to find the sweet spots of giving you enough content and insight into the projects while not dragging it on. So here it is. This is my second major project for the month. I really loved putting it together. The client really loved the end result as well, which is also great. So yeah, enjoy. Hello again, I'm back. So another project that I have been working on for this month is an illustration that I had to create that was going to be wrapped around a car, like an external wrap. And the car was going to be displayed at like an event that was all during Pride Month, and it was like a sporting event. So it was kind of interesting. Definitely was a new thing for me. I've wrapped a car once for a project, but this had this extra layer of like, how does it relate to sports and like pride, which was, which was a cool thing. It was a really quick turnaround project, which I don't always normally get to do. I've gotten really good at saying no to things if I know I can't actually manage it in with everything else that's going on in my life, and not just saying yes just because I want to do the work. It's like I need to be realistic. So in terms of the concept, because it was such a quick turnaround, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to come up with all these brand new ideas. It had to be something that was already existing in my history of illustrations that I could then rework and reimagine to put on the car artwork. It also meant that it became more of a design problem of how does the work sit on the car rather than coming up with these brand new ideas, if that makes sense. The client was really happy with that approach, and they understood that it was hard for me to get this done in time. So they're like, yes. We had a look through the catalogue of like the things I've done, and it turns out I actually do have some sporting related things, which I knew, but I guess in the moment I was like, oh no, what do I have? So for me, there's my queer wrestling championship belt and also my trophies, which all come back to this idea of embracing and celebrating and acknowledging my queer self and like self-love. So yeah, it was kind of like tick, like it worked perfectly. In terms of like what the wrestling belts and all that sort of mean, I guess like the wrestling belt is work that I did for a group show. It was the first work that I really did where I was exploring this idea of how camp and homoerotic wrestling really is. It's something that I've always watched as a kid. I watched it with my brothers a lot, and it was probably the only sporting thing that we actually had in common that we all enjoyed, that I felt like comfortable watching with them in some way. Like if football came on, I didn't really care so much about it, but if wrestling was on, we were all like in it, watching it together, and that's like a really nice thing to think about. But it was also, it's very theatrical. It's all, like fake to some degree. It's guys are slicked up and greasy, and it's like, yeah, it's so homoerotic that I watched a few episodes when I was at university studying theatre, and it all kind of clicked, and I was like, oh my god, wrestling is so gay. It's so campy. It's so fab. I love it. And I wanted to explore the idea of that. So I made myself this big queer champion wrestling belt that I gave to myself. And I really want to now, I guess, like go and start to make some other belts. Like there's things like, like a Divas Championship. What would that look like? A tag team championship, which, might be related to like open relationships or like poly relationships or things like that. Yeah, so that's sort of like where that sort of whole concept sits for me. And then for the trophies, it's a newer thing that I was exploring about self-love, and I think it's a more like internal thing. As a kid, because I didn't play sports, I never got trophies. The only 2 trophies I got in my life were for working at KFC, and one was for speed and one was for accuracy. And that's it. I mean, that's pretty on brand for me. Like, I love KFC. So having those trophies kind of made sense. And so I wanted to start to give myself some trophies as this process of self-love, of, you know, acknowledging, embracing, and celebrating who I was. And so I made this like star, heart, and love heart trophy icons. And I've done them a little bit in some other projects. I did some public art for World Pride with one of the trophies. I made some cubes for a shopping centre, which were like a public art thing. I've started to make some like prints and cards to sell in my online shop around it. So I've definitely been exploring where they sort of sit in my world, and I really like the iconography around it. So I thought that was like a really nice entry point into the sporting world as well. So I had wrestling belts and I had trophies, which was great. And then the other image or the other item that I always talk about is flowers. And in a previous Mardi Gras campaign, I really explored this idea that like youth are like flowers, and you've got to nourish them and let them grow. And we're like this big community kind of feel, like a community garden. And I really loved that idea. So I wanted to bring that into it too. So, and that gave me a chance to bring in like grass for an oval. So it was, all these sort of elements came together, and so that's what the design was going to be about. Something that was really unique about this process is that, like I mentioned before, it was not so much about creating all these new design elements. It was actually working out how they sit on the car and taking into consideration things like the contours of like the bonnet, where the holes had to be for like lights and the number plate, and where like the door opens and the handles, the way that it curves from like side to the back, and are things going to be like bent over or like warped over something? Will it look weird when you're like looking at it in person? What do I put on the top? Will it be seen, but you can't like avoid not doing it because something has to be there? So it was an interesting process of going from like a 2D flat design and really trying to imagine it as a 3D object. So that was a really cool part to it. Okay, so I wanted to share the process of me creating the initial concept. It's just a quick little time lapse, but I think it's pretty satisfying to watch, if I do say so myself. Next up, I'll explain it all and then we'll go from there. So this is the final concept. I went with the flowers on the roof because I thought there was just more space for it there, so I could really spread it out and like fill it with the flowers, and then have the flowers come down the back, or like this like grass texture come down the back. And then I was able to do like the footballs that we did with the Indigenous and trans flags. So I thought that like wrapping down the car made sense, and then it gave the football element, which was good. And then I wanted to, when I looked at like the trophy and the wrestling belt, it just kind of made more sense for the trophy go on the front of the bonnet. It filled out the space better, and then the wrestling belt makes sense being on the side because it's like a landscape thing. So it turned out that a lot of what I wanted to do, it just kind of fell into place really quickly. One of the biggest things that was the hardest to work out was trying to work out like all these smaller spaces, what I was going to do in them, how I was going to fill it up but not make it feel too busy. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. And this is like the color palette we used as well, like this like rainbow, it's not the traditional rainbow, but um it's a really nice, was a really refreshing way, especially after like World Pride, to work with a color palette that wasn't just the typical rainbow for them. So yeah, that's the final concept. Kind of love it. Kind of love it. Alright, so hopefully this isn't too repetitive after showing you the process of the initial concept time lapse, but I wanted to show you the process of creating the final mock-up once the design was approved by the client. I think it's really good to show because I think it's equally as satisfying as the first, but it's in a different way. It's really crisp and clean and pleasing to watch. So yeah, enjoy this and then I'll talk to you on the other side. Alright, so file is sent off to the printer with like a day to spare, which is great. Everyone's really happy with it. I love the design. So now it's just like the waiting game of like, is it going to look like the way it's meant to look like, which is always something that you get put in your head when I hand something over to someone else to finish off, like with printing and builds and things like that. It's obviously natural to feel that way, but for me, there's something about printing that always gets me scared because I'm like, have I made the file right? Is it going to be in the correct format? I always like struggle with things like bleeds and all that kind of crap. So yeah, they said it's fine, but the fear will never go away. So I'm going down tomorrow to see the car. It'll be on site and yeah, it'll be really great. So I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, I think the car's coming up here. Oh, I see it. Ah! Oh my god. I love it, love it, love it. Okay, yesterday I saw the car and chef's kiss. It went so well. I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. I couldn't be there for long, unfortunately. I had to come home, do some work, which was fine. We did like interviews and all that kind of stuff and took all the photos, which is great. But yeah, I was so happy with it. The client was really happy with it. Everyone involved, all like the partners and sponsors and stuff, everyone's really happy, which is great. And like always such a relief, but it's yeah, went so well. This project has really opened me up to wanting to flesh out a little bit more this whole idea of like me and my work in relationship to sports, to like queerness and being in those spaces. And I guess even like my childhood and my relationship with it. And I thought I'd sort of like unpacked it all, but this project has really brought up, I think that I unpacked it all, but then like happily set it to the side and allowed sports and my relationship to it just sort of be what it was. But this has really opened me up to feel like maybe I could get back into the sports in spaces and environments. And as someone who I guess at this point in my life feels a little bit uncomfortable in those spaces, I have a bit of like hope now after being there yesterday that I could maybe get into them and like go to sporting games and be involved in sports a bit more as an adult, which is kind of weird and kind of cool. The like few times I have been to a sporting event since being an adult, I'm definitely guilty of, you know, like straightening myself up, wearing black, taking out earrings, just like being less visible because I didn't want to attract attention to myself. I just like felt really anxious in those spaces. And I guess when it comes down to it, it was because I didn't really see anyone like myself at those events from what I saw. So yeah, and being a part of a project like this where it's based around visibility in the sporting world, it's like, oh, this is the change that we need. And this is like one of the, you know, it's a long way to go, but this is one of those steps that makes progress in some way with people. So like, yeah, it kind of gives me hope that maybe one day I might go to a sporting match and, you know, dress the way I want to dress. Like this is the jumper I wore yesterday, and I think it's the most colourful I've ever. Actually, I'm very confident. Yesterday, what I wore to the event, to the car, was the most colourfully and authentically me I've dressed at a sporting match ever in my life. So that's saying something, right? And it's like, this is a part of World Pride. Sorry, not World Pride. I keep on saying that, but it's not World Pride at all. This is something that is a part of Pride Month, which comes after World Pride. So the other part to really think about is now, what do we do outside those two sort of stages in the calendar? And I think I really could now, I'm going to sit down and try and work out how I could work with organizations and clubs and things like that in different ways that's outside of those time periods, because that's when you can even make even more change or make more impact and be more visible. So yeah, it's pretty funny that such a quick turnaround project has made such a big opening in my inner like discussions and how that relates to my work and me as a person. But that's also like classic me. I'm such a Virgo and an analyzer and reflector. So at the end of every project, this is what I do. I'm like, what did I get out of this? And like, what do I want to do moving forward? And do I want to do this again? So like, this is a part of my thought process. And I think it's a really important part as well of every process, is to reflect on it, because otherwise you can just fall into those traps of just going and doing the same things over and over and over because it becomes a habit. But if it's something I don't want to do, I don't want to do it. So that's the beauty of freelancing. I can control the type of work and the people I work with. So I've got to reflect on it to know whether or not I want to do it. So yeah, so that was a great project to be a part of. All right, there you go. I hope you really enjoyed this second part to this month's blog. I really loved putting it together, and I really hoped you enjoyed watching the project come to life. If you did, let me know in the comments below. I am always down for chatting about stuff, answering questions, just getting to know more people and bring more people into my family. There's links to my Instagram, my LinkedIn, and my website in the show notes below, as well as to my quarterly newsletter, and also anything else that I think is necessary for this blog. I'll probably put in there so like the client, and so you can find out more about that organization who do great work. 2010. Mwah. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm gonna go and have a snack now before the gym. So have a good afternoon, morning, evening, daytime, whenever you're watching this, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Mwah.